So the execute statement then in this particular example shows that we have a step 1. We are executing a program equals IEFBR14. We are passing a parameter that has a 0130 2015 in it, and then we have a region equals 8 megabytes, indicating that that's the amount of virtual storage that we want to allow ourselves to allocate. And this would be all that would be necessary in order to set up an execute statement for this particular type of work. An additional statement, again, is the condition parameter, just as we saw on the job statement, and this will also be discussed in more detail in a subsequent module, because this is used to be able to test the condition codes of previous steps to determine whether or not this step should run or not. So in a similar way that it works on the job statement it applies to the entire job. On the step, we can check specific previous conditions to determine whether or not the step should run. So additional parameters that are available on the execute statement are also documented in the MVS JCL reference. Same way that we had in the job statement, there are a lot of extra parameters available. Very few of them are coded or used, and as a result, if you need to look up any of those references, that would be the documentation that you would want to peruse. The JCL errors that we have with respect to the execute statement, in this example here, you can see that we spelled the word execute wrong. And as a result, what happens is that the syntax checking indicates that he could not locate the execute statement, and as a result, this job has no steps. And because of that, that caused a failure to interpret the DD statements that followed. So as a result, we have 6 error messages indicated, although the only statement that is actually in error is statement number 2, with execute being spelled incorrectly. Another example of a JCL error associated with the execute statement, in this case the program keyword is spelled incorrectly. It just has a PM, and so in this case you can see that we have an error message indicating that statement 2 is in error and that it must specify either program or proc equals in order to be interpreted properly. So this kind of rounds out the whole basis of the execute statement. There's not really a lot involved in the execute statement beyond identifying either the JCL procedure or the program we intend to execute. Optionally, we may or may not have parameters that we want to pass to a program, and we may have keyword parameters that we want to specify that are different from those that might exist on the job statement. But beyond that, the execute statement is a very straightforward command that allows us to indicate what program or proc we want to execute. So for this demonstration, again, we're going to go back and take a look at the IBGener JCL and see exactly how that statement is coded, as well as explore the other parameters that we might code on a situation like this to show how they can be put together. In this particular example, we have the IEBGener coded on the execute statement. And you can see that what we have is we have a step name identified here. You can see the operation field here specifying execute, and then we have program equals IEBGener. In this case, this is all that's necessary. In the event that we wanted to specify something different, we could specify, for example, a region parameter here if we wanted something to be much larger storage-wise. We could also specify a time parameter here, in addition to like a region parameter, to indicate that we wanted to override some of the values that might be associated with the job statement. Now in this case, since there is only one step, coding it on the job statement or coding it on the execute statement would produce exactly the same results. So using them on the execute statement is really more of an issue of multiple steps within a particular job, where you want to separate them out to have different values in the event that that becomes important. IEBGener does not have any parameters that go with it, but one of the things that we could code is that if this program accepted parameters, we would then be able to code a parm equals, and then we could go ahead and specify whatever value it was that that parm recognized. So in the event of something like a date, we could easily do something like this, and then that information would be passed to the program for processing. So this is basically how we would structure an execute statement in order to produce the various results that we might be interested in. But again, in this case here, since the purpose is just to run this IEBGener utility program, the only thing we are required to have is the program equals. The system will search for the IEBGener program in the designated system libraries, execute it, and that will then allow us to perform the function that it does. So that concludes our view of the execute statement. In the next module, we will take a look at the data definitions, or the DD statements, which represent both our input and our output requirements for the files, whether they be input or output files, or whether they represent input data that is in stream or output data that is destined for a printer. So we will take a look at that in the next module.